Hey everybody, this is Tanner Steed. Today we're going to be working on a master copy of this Abbott Henderson Thayer. We're going to be discussing the different ways that you can do a master copy and maybe the rationale behind why you would do a master copy. So there are many different reasons why you would want to do a master copy. Perhaps you love the colors that a particular artist used. That would be a reason to do a master copy of their work. Maybe not for the drawing, maybe you're not really into the drawing, but their use of color is just so expressive and so interesting. That would be something to copy. Maybe a composition in a particular painting is just ridiculous, so exquisite, and you want to be able to take that information and apply it to your own work. By doing a master copy, it's the equivalent of taking notes in a college course and preparing for a test. So you're doing the homework, you're practicing the reps and kind of feeling the experience that the artist had while creating that piece of artwork. Other reasons that you would want to do a master copy would be the brush work. It could be the drawing, the line work. So there's so much to appreciate in artwork, and there's so much nuance that you can focus on. The focus for me today is mostly going to be color and a little bit of composition. I plan to do a series of roses soon, and Abbott Thayer is one of my favorite painters, particularly for the subject of roses. And so I wanted to kind of learn a little bit more about his color palette. It's so neutralized but also cool, and I just really am attracted to that style of painting and that color harmony that he likes to use or like to use. So that's what I'll be focusing on today. I'm not worried about the drawing, I'm just focusing on the color notes. I'm using my Sienna Pochade box today, and I thought it would be helpful actually to have two palettes on the side so I can actually test out my colors before I apply them to the canvas and give you guys a better look at the palette up near the canvas. I've selected a canvas panel that I made in an earlier video. If you haven't checked that out and you want to know how to make one of these surfaces, please watch the video. This is a 8 by 13. It's the golden ratio. And the reason why I selected this canvas or this panel is because the painting I'll be copying today is of that same ratio. Alright, so my color selection is going to be very specific. So I'm looking at the painting and I'm asking myself, what are the most saturated notes of color? And how am I going to try to achieve that without going overboard and getting a pigment that's way too powerful? I want more of a limited palette, and I want to restrict myself into a particular palette, and then if I need to reach a certain note, then I can add something. But I don't want to go to the extremes of getting a cadmium orange for this particular painting. It's a very neutralized painting, so I'm not going to need extremely powerful pigments. No phthalos are going to be used in this. My primary palette is actually going to be just simple Zorn palette, which in this case I'm using Williamsburg titanium white, got a yellow ochre, I've got a flesh ochre, and an ivory black. So I'm gonna start out there, and I'm seeing some purples that I'm not sure if I can achieve with this. In fact, I'm certain I can't achieve it with this. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'm seeing some transparency in some of the darks. So I may add a transparent brown oxide and a transparent yellow earth. But all of these are very desaturated, and if I need anything to reach a higher note, I'll reach for that in the future. But this is going to be my main palette. Okay, so I like to start out using Vine charcoal. Vine charcoal is very easily dusted off, so if I don't get the drawing perfect, then I can easily erase it and try again. After I've established the drawing with charcoal, I like to reinforce it with pencil. Just a regular number 2 pencil is totally fine. That will retain the drawing when I paint over any of the marks that I made earlier. What I noticed about this composition is it's actually using the golden ratio. I didn't realize that the composition was using the Fibonacci sequence until
I started creating this master copy, which only made me admire it more. I think it's pretty interesting that Abbot Thayer would even choose to do that. So the panel that I'm working on is an 8 by 13, which is within that golden ratio. I'm pre-mixing a bunch of color notes that I'm seeing around the canvas. I try to get color notes from every single part, from the background to foreground to the darkest darks to the lightest lights, and that way I can see my pre-mixtures all next to each other as a general palette to work from rather than going from pure pigment. Having these mother mixtures, if you will, allows for more harmony when you mix them together rather than going directly from the pure pigments from the tube. I like to start out with the background and the things with less details, and that way I can better gauge the values for the more detailed areas like the roses. I also like to hit the most saturated notes, which I noticed that very saturated purple in the bottom right. I went over it a few times during this painting because I wasn't quite sure if it was saturated enough, and this is where you can actually play around with your color palette. I decided after this first session that I actually needed to use alizarin crimson permanent in order to get something that's closer to the purples that I was seeing in the painting. I also like to make sure that I am aware of what colors are opaque naturally out of the tube and what are more transparent. My darks tend to lean towards a more transparent look, and that makes for richer darks, and it feels like it has more depth, and it is more beautiful in my opinion. Whereas the lights are much more opaque and they are painted much more thickly. In order to start a painting like this, it can be overwhelming if you've never done a master copy. I suggest that you pick an area that is quite clear to you, something that's standing out, like a clear value relationship, a clear edge, a clear color, and you'll gain confidence as you work around the painting. Each rose is so unique, so I like to just go for the one that hits you first. So I was first looking at the rose on the left-hand side and noticing the deep, deep red in the darks, and that relationship next to the pinks, the very neutral pinks next to that. So I laid that in, established that relationship, and now I'm moving around. I gained confidence to move on to different shapes and different roses that were even a bit more complicated. And I tend to bounce around the canvas. So as I bounce around the canvas and slowly develop each area, I tried to not leave any one area behind. This is an alla prima painting session, so I am painting everything wet into wet, which I definitely feel after analyzing this masterpiece by Abbot Henderson Thayer that he definitely painted wet into wet. And then I was also noticing that there were these really vibrant lines that almost looked like he was scratching into the canvas. So I tried scratching in just to play around with that idea. And you can really only get this effect if the paint is painted wet and wet, or alla prima. So you'll see me occasionally take my palette knife and scrape at the canvas, revealing the white underneath. So the more I worked on this, the more color I was actually able to see. At first glance, this seems like a very neutral painting, but it's actually just very, very harmonious in this blue-green, neutral blue-green, almost pastel color harmony. But the darks had so much red and yellow and blues and purples. I was shocked, actually. The more you look into the painting, the more you learn. It's also really important to try to find the most high-quality reference that you can find. It's best to ideally go to a museum and take the photo yourself so you can expose the painting best to try to capture the color accurately. So I went around and looked for the best reference that I could find. And some artists tend to start out more saturated and then slowly neutralize as they work in wet paint. I kind of work the opposite direction. I tend to try to pre-mix my best guess, but it typically leans a bit more neutral than what is actually being seen. And then I slowly introduce more saturated color to make it closer to what I'm actually seeing. And I guess that just kind of goes with my style and what I care about. I tend to like a more neutral painting with a more close-knit color harmony rather than more extravagant saturated colors. But I can respect other artists who do that. And really, what was I trying to learn in this painting? What was trying to capture his color and his way of seeing the world. So, of course, when you're creating a master copy, you're going to have a sense or a feeling that you should paint it in a certain way. But at the beginning of your painting session, you need to be aware of what your goal is. So for this, I wanted to look at the roses and how he was painting the details, because it is really a loose painting, very expressive brushwork. So he isn't necessarily getting every single petal. Rather, he's painting the illusion of all the petals. And then I was also focused on composition and the color harmony, primarily the color harmony. I plan to do a series of roses soon, and I wanted to use this color harmony or something similar to it in a future piece that I'm planning. So as I work the painting, I lay in a color, and I try to get 2 problems solved at once, at least. I'm going for both the drawing and the color accuracy. After that, I will approach the edge. So I may go back and forth between 2 colors. If I feel that 2 colors are accurate, 2 color values are accurate, then I can work them back and forth until I've established a more accurate edge. It's a very complicated problem to solve, but at least when you're painting a master copy, they've already reduced the subject itself down to a refined solution that you can aim to copy. I love using that Indian yellow in the shadows. I just recently added that to my palette, and I am obsessed.
So it looks like we're just about finished here. So the goal for today was to capture the color notes that I see in the painting. I wasn't really worried about the drawing, but I was also just trying to feel how Abbott Thayer created this composition and where the flow of the brushstrokes were. I feel that I have accomplished my goal for today. Essentially, when I decided to do this master copy, I was really focused on how I could learn from Abbott Thayer and apply the color variations and the way he composed his roses into my own paintings. Oh, and also I will be posting this to my Instagram, so if you're not following me on there, it's just Steed Art. Go check that out. I will be posting the final master copy painting there, so by the time this video comes out, that will certainly be up. Alright, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. I'll be coming out with weekly videos for the next million years. So if you enjoyed this and you feel like you learned something, let me know. I also want to know what other master copies have you done, and maybe what master copies should I do in the future. There are so many artists to study, and I feel that I learn a new name every single day. So leave your favorite artist down in the comments. I look forward to painting with you next time.